All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're doing some team previews, diving into SMU today. If you are enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support we get. But we're going to kick it off with Cody, starting off with the offense of SMU, and just talk a little bit about some strengths that we may see this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of on-ball talent on this roster. I guess that's the uh, number one strength of this team. I mean, Andy Enfield teams always have some like on-ball creators in the backcourt, like guys like Bogey Ellis, Isaiah Collier back in his USC days. But yeah, this team has the same type of outlook with Boopy Miller, BJ Edwards, and Jerron Pierre. Like Pierre averaged 22 points a game in Conference USA at Jacksonville State last season. So I mean, I do think at any point in time you're going to be able to put the ball in one of these three guys' hands and say, "Hey, go get a bucket." And I think they're going to be able to do that, particularly like late in games and like last second situations and like clutch time. I think they can be, a pretty solid unit. Um, like Boopy Miller is a high level pick and roll operator and playmaker, and like, he is a bit erratic at times, but I think we know what we're getting with him in this offense. Like he had a 35% assist rate to a 17% turnover rate in this offense last season. Edwards is more of a, rim reliant scorer, and a capable playmaker and downhill scorer in transition. And like I mentioned, Pierre had a huge season at Jacksonville State, had his best shooting year of his career. He shot at 38.2%, and just 39% of his 3-point makes were assisted, which is a very low number. You're typically seeing 3-point makes being assisted at like an 80% clip. I mean, to be sub 40 is pretty ridiculous, and it kind of shows his ability to make perimeter shots off the bounce. So it does seem like that's something that's going to translate. He's a bigger guard or wing, so he's going to be able to get his shot up over the top of some of these ACC defenses. And I do think to pair with these guards, I think that SMU has some of the play finishing in the front court to go with these perimeter creators. Like Samet Yekatoglu was here last year, and he was the beneficiary of the Boopy Miller Edwards creation last year. He's 7'2", and he's an over the top threat that not a lot of teams are really going to be able to match size wise. I mean, just to note, he was somehow only a 22nd percentile rim scorer, but I do think his above the rim qualities are going to help this offense for like Miller and Edwards and some others. And there's the front court newcomers as well in Corey Washington coming from Wichita State, and then the two freshmen in Jaden Toombs and Nigel Walls also project to be really good play finishers. Particularly Toombs, I think he has the most like versatility in the pick and roll game. I think he can operate a little bit in short roll, a little bit as a dribble handoff operator. So I do think there's a lot of depth in the front court to go along with these playmakers in the backcourt.
Marcus, let's hop over to you. Anything to add strength wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to spend a ton of time, but it's the guards obviously that are going to generate almost all the offense. Miller, Pierre, Edwards can all do a lot of things with the ball in their hand. Boopy Miller, like Cody said, 34% assist rate. I think that's going to be extremely beneficial for like a front court in particular that's a little bit younger. You're not going to have to play through them really at all. You can rely on your guards that have experience and creation ability to get downhill and generate those opportunities for them, and then just have them, clean up the glass, because a high number of shots are going to come out of these three guards. So having them there to clean things up and just making that their offensive role and worrying about more on the defensive end, right? These three guards, I think it's nice to have a team where you have three guards that, can all go and play a fast tempo and get out and run, and all go get a bucket seemingly whenever they want to. Not always the most efficient way, but they're all capable of creating offense for themselves. So it's a extremely beneficial thing to have, I think, for Andy Enfield. And like you said, Cody, his most successful teams, it's what they've had, right? They've had guards that can get out and run. They've just had guards that can really score it, right? And that's what he has again here with these three guys.
Any areas of concern you see, Cody?
Yeah, I have a few, but I do think this is going to be a good transition offense, like you mentioned. They're going to be good on the offensive glass as well with the depth that they have. Like Igutoglu, 12% offensive rebound rate last year. Corey Washington at 6'6" was 11% last year at Wichita State, and Jaden Toombs is like highly regarded as a two-way rebounder. So I do think they're going to be like a top 50 offensive rebound rate team nationally. But for issues, I would say I think off-ball shooting and just a lack of connector pieces on this roster. Like I think Pierre and Walters, or Sam Walters, coming from Michigan, he was also at Alabama. I think they're solid options, but Walters is pretty limited to being a stationary catch and shoot guy, and as good as Pierre shot it last year, it's unknown whether or not he can play in an off-ball role as a shooter. Like he had a sky-high usage at Jacksonville State for like the first time in his career, and then he has like a sample size of a few other years where he was playing, or of 3 years of playing off the ball and being much less impactful as from an offensive standpoint. Like he was also at Wichita State, and I can't remember if he played with Washington or not, but he really struggled as a shooter, playing more off the ball with guards there that were just ahead of him in the pecking order. And I do think he's an improved shooter. Like obviously, I mean, he shot at 38% with the ball in his hands more, but just as like a pure catch and shoot option, having to play more off the ball with like Boopie Miller taking up a lot of the usage, I do think there are some concerns. Like, and there's a lot to replace from a shooting perspective as well. Like SMU had 3 guys leave who shot over 38% from 3 last year, and Matt Cross, Chuck Harris, and Cairo Oquendo. Like Harris and Oquendo shot at over 40% themselves on like decent volume, and I just don't think they addressed this area all that well.
Marcus, what are you concerned about with this SMU offense?
Yeah, I think like while the guards are what make this offense go, I also think there are some concerns in regards to like their efficiency. Luckily for them, there are 3 of them. And so like you would like to think that they're not all going to be inefficient every night. But I think the efficiency is a bit of a concern, particularly like in a system that's going to play quicker, right? You're going to run into not only like shooting inefficiencies where, you know, guys take bad shots, but also, you know, turning the ball over. They're going to be playing faster. I think it's more of a projection, but I think like you could see this offense turn the ball over a bit too much. Obviously, like Cody mentioned, Boopie Miller does a great job of taking care of the ball, and has a high assist rate. But I also think that, you know, the faster you play, you know, you're going to have 3 guards that can all go. And I think that, particularly if the off-ball shooting is a bit of a concern, you know, I could see like things getting forced and, you know, bad shots being taken. So I can see efficiency potentially being a bit of a problem. That's really where my main concern lies, you know, with the 3 guys that really are going to end up, you know, making or breaking whether SMU is reaches their potential, right?
Let's flip to the other side of the ball here and talk defensively. And Cody, we'll start with you and focus more on the strengths here starting now.
Yeah, I think the strength here is rim protection, as it kind of always is with Andy Enfield teams. Like I think Igutoglu and Toombs rotating or kind of platooning those minutes, I think creates a solid floor for the 2-point defense and for an Andy Enfield defense that essentially lives off of that area. Like Igutoglu had a 4.8% block rate, and I would project Toombs to be fairly similar in that area. Like he's got a super long wingspan for only being, I think he's 6 foot. He's 6'11", but I do think he has a plus wingspan as well. So I would project him to have close to a 5% block rate. And Andy Enfield defenses have finished 54th or better nationally in 2-point field goal percentage defense in 6 straight seasons, including 4 straight finishes inside the top 8 while he was at USC. And obviously having a generational talent in Evan Mobley helps one of those years, and another generational talent, not generational, but another high-level defensive talent in Onyeka Okongwu, who went top 10 overall. I do think that really helps to have a great 2-point defense.
Generational.
Is he generational? I mean, I think some people thought he was a generational talent.
Like I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, and he was perfect for this Enfield scheme, and I do think they have like some bigs that are going to be really impactful for his interior defense again. And I think like Corey Washington and Nigel Walls, I think provide like pretty high level weak side rim protection at the 4. So I'm not really worried about this team from an interior defense standpoint.
Marcus, anything to add strength wise?
No, I mean, I think that is exactly right. I think the strength is going to be, and we'll talk about weaknesses here in a second, but I think the strength is going to be that front court, rim protection. I think they should be like a solid defensive rebounding team, because they should have some size on the court at all times. I mean, I think they have several guys that can all play. So I think that should certainly be a strength. They should be able to protect the rim well, which I think they're going to need to, because of the potential concern for the guard defense.
All right, let's talk weaknesses then. Cody, what are you concerned about with this SMU defense?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm concerned about any particular like area on the roster, because I think Miller and Edwards. I mean, I think Edwards he's a great defender on the perimeter. Just to note that, I mean, 6'5", 2 guard with a ton of size and forces a ton of turnovers. I think he had like a 4.4% steal rate last season, which is one of the higher numbers across the entire nation. Like definitely across power leagues, but I do think he's a pretty high level defender. But my concern is like some of the Andy Enfield scheme is an issue. Like as good as their rim protection has been and as high level as it's been, like they give up a ton of threes and a ton of 3-point attempts at the least. And I think a lot of it is because they play a little bit too much zone, or did play a lot of zone in the past. Like I don't have the exact percentage of zone that they played, but I remember at USC he would play zone a little bit too often with the high level rim protectors that he has on his roster. Like I mentioned, they were top 54 in 2-point field goal percentage defense in 6 straight years, 4 straight in the top 8. Yet they gave up so many 3-point attempts. And during this stretch of great interior defense, his teams have ranked 235th, 103rd, 71st, 179th, 243rd, and 264th in 3-point attempt rate allowed. And I do think part of like if you're going to have these elite rim protectors, like you need to filter opposing offenses into it. And I think he's done a rather poor job of like cutting off catch and shoot 3-point attempts, which is like, it's an efficient play type across college basketball. Everyone's trying to figure out ways of how do I generate an open catch and shoot 3? And I think Andy Enfield has just kind of given those up a little bit too often with the talent that he has. And like, I just think he's not really a ceiling guy. Like he has a high floor as a defensive coach with the rosters that he accumulates, but ceiling wise, it's just not really there. And like his finishes overall in his last 6 years on the defensive end are 16th and 8th. In those 2 years, he had Onyeka Okongwu or Evan Mobley. In the other years, he was 59th, 53rd, 60th, and 78th. And if you have such an elite 2-point defense and you're finishing outside of the top 50 more often than not in overall adjusted defensive efficiency, like I'm going to bring up concerns with you as a defensive head coach.
Marcus, anything to add defensively?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about the perimeter defense, I guess, for a minute. I think, like Cody said, Edwards, really good defensive player in the backcourt. I have some concerns with Miller and Pierre, I guess. I think they're offensive-minded guys. I think the thing with Miller is he's capable of making plays on the defensive end, but I don't overly like trust him as a consistent defender on the defensive end. Like he had a 3.1% steal rate, I think. But as a consistent like on-ball defender, I don't know really how much I trust him. Like Edwards, like Cody said, will be great, but I think the other two around him, I'm a little bit concerned about, particularly, having a younger front court behind you, which I think will be good ultimately. But I think you have to mention the inexperience of the front court a little bit, and having hesitation there because, younger guys in a power conference typically means more foul trouble, typically means just less discipline. Fortunately, like we talked about, there are a few different guys that can rotate in there, but I think like with those guards up top, if they're not disciplined on the defensive end, you've got younger, likely less disciplined bigs on the back line that, in an Andy Enfield system that typically, want to block a bunch of shots. And I think we could see some foul trouble there.
All right, we'll switch paces a little bit here and talk X Factor and MVP. And we'll start with you, Cody.
Yeah, my MVP was Boopy Miller. I just think I think he ultimately becomes the engine of this offense, as a creator and even a little bit as a perimeter scorer off the bounce, because like Edwards by his side, and I do have my concerns about Pierre when it comes to playing a little bit more off the ball and even scoring inside the arc. Like he did struggle even in Conference USA as an interior scorer. Like could score at the mid range, could score it from three, but obviously had his concerns at the rim. And for a 6'5" wing, I think that brings up some issues with his ability to translate at the ACC level. So ultimately, I went with the guy that I'm more certain about in Boopy Miller. But I did make Jerron Pierre my X factor. I do think his perimeter scoring is going to be pretty big, and like as good of a shooter Sam Walters is, like I don't think he's going to play like any more than 20 minutes a game on this roster just because of Andy Enfield emphasizing his 2-point defense and his rim protection overall. So, and I think he's a rather poor defender. He doesn't defend well in space, and you can really only play him at the 4. So ultimately, I think Jerron Pierre's floor spacing, and like he's really the only projected guy that's going to play a lot of minutes who can knock it down at a high clip.
Marcus, do you share the same thoughts, or you got a different MVP and X factor?
Share the same thoughts for MVP. I think Boopy Miller's the MVP. His ability to create not only for himself but for others, and also seemingly be able to take care of the basketball at a high rate, given usage, I think is going to be really good for this team. And it's why he's going to be the best player and their engine. I think X factor, I went just a different direction. I almost went Pierre, but I went BJ Edwards. I think just because of his ability to impact on both ends. He had, like Cody said, almost a 5% steal rate, 21% assist rate on the offensive end, 19% usage rate. His shooting isn't fantastic, and he's not like a high volume 3-point shooter, only took 85 threes last year, but I think just like his steadiness on both ends and his ability to impact, particularly on the defensive end, is what's going to make him their X factor. But I think you could really have gone either direction. Like I easily could have said Pierre as well.
And then finally, we're going to do a ceiling and floor for SMU, and then we'll wrap it up with a bold prediction. Cody, what are your thoughts?
My ceiling for this team is probably 4th or 5th in the ACC, just because their talent is, one of the better groups in this league overall. I'm personally not all that high on this group to get to that level, just because I am concerned. I have my concerns on both sides of the ball, and as talented as they are, I know Marcus alluded to their shot diet. Like I think there's a bit of an issue there. Like Boopy Miller was 6th percentile in rim and 3 rate. BJ Edwards was 30th percentile in rim and 3 rate, and Pierre was 26th percentile. So if there's going to be a ton of mid-range jumpers taken, and you can't really space the floor from 3, I just think that creates a rather poor outlook on the offensive end. And then you add in like Andy Enfield's like inability to raise a defense unless he has like a lottery talent on the back line. I can see how this team ends up like 10th or 11th in the league. Ultimately, I think they can get into the tournament as an 8 or 9 seed, because I think the ACC is better than it was last year, and I think there's going to be some quality wins to be had as opposed to the past few years. But in my personal opinion, I don't see this team making the tournament. I see them maybe around that next 4 out segment or section.
How about a bold prediction from you?
Come back to me on that one. I'm still trying to put that one together, actually.
All right, sounds good. We'll move over to Marcus. We'll do ceiling, floor, bowl prediction.
Yeah, I think ceiling, 5 seed in the ACC, maybe 4, but I think, we'll say 4. Ceiling 4, floor like 8 or 9. I feel like they're kind of narrowed in on that. I would kind of expect closer to like 6 or 7. I think somewhere right in the middle of that. Bold prediction wise, I'm gonna say Boopy Miller averages the most assists in the ACC and he's gonna average 6.5 plus. Last year was at 5.5. I think he makes a jump. 6.5, most in the ACC.
All right, Cody, you got anything?
All right, I am ready now. I mean, Pierre averaged 22 points a game last year for Jacksonville State. I think he averages under 14 points a game this year. I don't think his game translates as well as people think. Like, people perceived him as like one of the top portal gets this season, and everyone thought he was going to leave and go to the NBA draft, but clearly didn't get good feedback. So now he's back here at SMU. I'm a little bit lower on his interior scoring ability, and like the sample size that we've seen in the past from his 3-point shot making off the catch, like, I think creates some concerns as well. So I'll say he averages under 14 points a game.
All right, well, that wraps up SMU. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.